This is the Animal Agenda, and I'm Tom Kiesche, and we're continuing our conversation this week with Dr. Melanie Wagner, otherwise known as Dr. Wags or Dr. Melanie, the Bureau Manager for Long Beach Animal Care Services, LBACS. And we're going deep in discussing, LBACS and what it takes to manage animal care services within a municipality. Last episode, we mentioned how we met through Canine Kismet. How many rescues does LBACS work with, or how is that process?
That's a great question. I don't have an exact answer for you because it is ever changing. We're always trying to add new rescues. In our cat world, I can tell you we have 3 very predominant rescues that we work with, and then a bunch of peripheral that take like 1 or 2 from us. But our main one takes about 500 to 900 kittens from us every year. Dog rescues, it's a much broader scope. So we have probably a group of, I'd say, maybe 10 to 12 really kind of consistent rescues that we work with. And then those peripheral ones that take like 1 or 2 when they can. It's really, really a passion of mine. I think I'd mentioned this in the other episode, but it is a passion of mine to really build our rescue network, to create that depth that we were talking about. And I won't talk too long about this, but I can tell you when I ran Kitty Bungalow, we focused on feral cats. That was our job. And so often other shelters other rescues didn't have positive outcomes for feral cats. So they'd pull feral mamas and babies from the shelter, make sure those kittens were weaned, and then Kitty Bungalow would come in and we'd actually pull ferals from them. But if we got neonates and didn't have the right nursery, we would trade, right? And this kind of like this niche, really knowing who you are as a rescue and us building up these layers of different rescues that specialize in senior dogs, medical cases, behavior dogs. The bigger we can build that community of rescues, the better we are going to be at life saving. And that is kind of in tune with what I was saying before about breadth and depth.
Yeah. We didn't talk about this in the last episode, but at Kitty Bungalow, it was a TNR and socialization facility. So what is TNR, and how does spay and neuter play into the whole picture of shelter management? Oh, my
gosh. I say spay and neuter everything. We fix. So TNR is trap, neuter, and return. It's the idea that we fix cats and put them back in their community. Community cats are often very, very well loved by their community. Usually the 15 people in that community feeding those cats think they're the only one, and those cats have the system figured out. Right? They have like a 5-mile roaming radius, and they probably have 7 to 22 homes that they're getting food from. And they are well loved in their community. We need to fix them. At Long Beach, we do something called SNR, which is shelter neuter return. And it's the same concept as TNR. They just have a stop off at the shelter first. So when somebody brings us a sick or injured cat, we get it healthy, get it where it needs to be. We get it fixed. We tip its ear so that the community knows that animal has been fixed, and we put it back into the community as long as it is a safe location with people who care for it. Spay and neuter, to be honest, is at the heart of everything we do. And during COVID, it had to come to a screeching halt for like spay and neuter in general for a variety of reasons. And so now a lot of shelters are really playing catch up on populations that kind of got out of control because we weren't able to provide the support for spay and neuter as well as we could pre-COVID. So now we're doing a lot of catch up, really focusing on it. Long Beach Animal Care Services does provide vouchers for both pets and community cats. And hopefully it is my dream someday to be able to have a low-cost spay and neuter clinic that LBACS can provide for the community. It's a dream. We're not there yet, but I see it in our future.
And since this is going to be aired as a separate show, LBACS, Long Beach Animal Care Services, the spay and neutering that you're talking about would be for people within the community of Long Beach and Signal Hill and Los Alamitos and Cerritos, correct?
Cerritos, correct.
So if that isn't in your community, ask your local shelter how you can get involved or how that could happen in your community. Okay. Last time we also stressed your new volunteer program, how it's open to new volunteers. I know the numbers fluctuate, but what is the approximate number of volunteers that you have overall on any given day? And what would be your target?
Yeah, so this has kind of been part of wrapping up and kind of tightening up our program. Is on paper, it said we had, I think, 120 or so active volunteers, but we really didn't. We have 25 core people who come in all the time. And so we realized we have about, I think, 50 or so really kind of active volunteers, anywhere from 1 day a week to they come 5 or 6 days a week. The goal is to be closer to having, to be honest, probably 150 to 200. Because I don't just want people coming and walking dogs, right? I would like volunteer adoption counselors. I would like volunteer med team. To help us distribute and work under the veterinary and, distribute medications, things like this, obviously all within the legal realm. I would love to have outreach volunteers, people coming and doing outreach and education in the community and helping us at adoption events. So there are a lot of avenues. I'd love to have photography volunteers who come and update all of our animals' pictures to increase their ability to get out. Everyone knows a good picture for an animal catches people's eye on the internet. So really, really important piece of what we do. Anyway, I can talk about volunteering forever. I think there's a lot of different people have a lot of different skill sets, and I'm always open to hear what those are and what people can bring to our community.
I think that's the key, that you use your skills as an individual and you come and you become part of the team, regardless of where you are. And you are not only being of service, but it's making you happy because you're doing what you love and what you're good at. Speaking of good volunteers, I just saw a video from Amber this morning that she put together, one of your volunteers that I met on our tour, which is very well done. And I just reposted it on Instagram today because it's just interviews of different volunteers at Long Beach and why they started volunteering. And I think that's really good. Messaging is so important in today's world. There's so much competition for our time. And I think volunteering is just a brilliant way to not only give back, but to learn. And as we talked about in the last episode, the dissertation about learning empathy through animals, I think our society right now is so lacking in empathy that animals, working with animals, volunteering with animals for years now has taught me more about being a good human, more about being a good actor, more about compassion than anything else in my life combined. So,
it's,
go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, it's just funny you say that, Tom. I 13 and a half years ago, adopted a dog off the euthanasia list, who needed a lot of work and a lot of training, and she'll be 15 this year. And honestly, she made me a better human. Working with a challenging dog who just came from a really rough domestic violence beginning, that relationship with her literally made me a better human.
This is the Animal Agenda. I'm Tom Kiesche, and we're continuing our conversation with Dr. Melanie Wagner, the top dog for Long Beach Animal Care Services. All right, I'm going to go off script right now and just say that at all the shelters that I do volunteer at, which I don't volunteer at Long Beach, as you know, we're having so many people surrendering old animals.
Yeah.
Because they want the new iPhone, basically, and they want something perfect out of the box. And I really think that the public is cheating themselves out of beautiful experiences with animals I'm going to cry.
Me too.
Beautiful experiences, animals as they get older, and the dignity and all they can learn from that. And that is one thing that is breaking my heart every time I volunteer, to see these animals. Literally, I've seen them pulled out of the back of a pickup truck in the rain and put in a wheelbarrow. And the shelter staff, who I hope to talk to about in this, saying all the different options that people could do to take care of that animal in their home, and waivers and vouchers, and people just wanting to get rid of the dog. And it just breaks my heart. So as far as volunteer recruitment, with all the shelters that I work at or volunteer at, and you mentioned training and things like that and all the things that volunteers can do, I find the hardest thing is some of these shelters retaining volunteers because of compassion fatigue. And so is there anything that Long Beach is doing for compassion fatigue, not only for volunteers, but staff who often get overlooked regarding compassion fatigue? And before I have you answer that, or before you answer that, I just want to say when I did tour your facility with you, before anyone even knew why I was there, you knew I was coming, but no one else did. I found the people there were so friendly and helpful. It was stark contrast to the previous time I went there. So whatever you're doing down there is working, and I applaud you for that. And then people were very willing to help and just be friendly and see what I needed, and it just seems so well thought out, and your doctorate in leadership and change was worth every penny. I've lost my plot.
Well, thank you. That was very nice of you to say.
But
you were asking about compassion fatigue.
Yeah, for volunteers and for staff, how do you deal with that, and yourself? Because I know how much these animals do mean to you. Last time I was there, you had a guinea pig living in your office, and so yeah, compassion fatigue.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and it's a real piece of what all of us deal with in this field. I might cry too. Try not to cry on a podcast, but it's a really important part of what we do is acknowledging how much people care and how much it can really drain a person to come to work day in and day out. See, I'm already getting to just who I am as a person. I think it's important we acknowledge it. I really, really do. And I think it's important we talk about it. I am an elephant in the room kind of person. So if there is something slightly uncomfortable, let's point it out. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out how we can do better or be better. And it's funny you bring this up because tomorrow we actually are bringing in an external, it's a Zoom meeting, but an external group for any staff who want to. It's not mandatory, but they can participate. And it is a compassion fatigue Zoom, essentially, available to all staff to get on, learn about what it is, learn about how to help kind of cope in their own individual way. I send out personally reminder emails to our staff, usually every couple of months to remind them that we have an EAP program, which is like a employee assistance program. So it's just free. You can jump on, had a really bad day. Maybe you're one of our officers who had to go pick up a dog and saw a dead body. It's a real thing. It happens. I encourage them to call EAP and get on the phone with a counselor immediately to talk about some of this stuff. I personally encourage everyone to have their own therapist. I think this work is really hard. And I think just having an outlet that isn't always dumping on your significant other about the crazy stuff we see in this field. Sometimes you just need that unbiased party. And then obviously I encourage work-life balance. I think it's really important to have hobbies, to do things that you love outside of this work. We all kind of have to have that balance in life. And for volunteers, we do have a monthly volunteer meeting, where I do try to remind them of some of this stuff, to take care of themselves. And I would like to, we'll see how this compassion fatigue seminar goes tomorrow, but I'd like to try to provide that to our volunteers as well for anyone who would like to join. So,
I think that's awesome, and I wish every volunteer program in every shelter did the same, and for their staff, because it is truly a hard, brutal place to be in many aspects. And thank you to everyone who does that, regardless of where you do it. So I teased a question in the last episode about what are the greatest challenges that LBACS is facing today that you have no control over, that specific legislation could help. And if activists moved it forward, would you or could you officially get behind it?
Yeah, I think one of our biggest challenge, and I think it's probably a challenge facing the nation, is large dogs. We have more large dogs than ever, and they are coming in faster than they are leaving. And this is the first time, I have to say, in 20 years of being in rescue, that I am looking at 100 really great dogs. We, of course, have these sprinkles of dogs that are not super great dogs, we'll be honest. But, I mean, we have dogs that you featured when you were here, Tom, that are amazing dogs, great pets, pet owner 101. And I cannot get them out the door into a home. And I think, just my own personal opinion, is that a lot of that has to do with, obviously, our economy, but aside from that is housing. The housing market has such restriction and such limitation on large breeds. I mean, everything's 15 or under, 25 or under, which is really funny because I have to say, 125-pound English Mastiff is probably going to sleep all day, and a 15-pound Jack Russell Terrier is going to shred your couch. So, and I say this as a cattle dog owner, right? The smaller does not necessarily mean calmer. So what I'd love to see in legislation would be something that really is an incentive to landlords, and whether we ultimately see that on a state level, or if maybe it's something on a local level we can work with Long Beach on, but to create incentives for property owners to allow large dogs, right? To open it up so there are no restrictions to the types of animals they have, I think would do us wonders.
I agree, and so do many people in the activist community that I'm friends with. So as far as staff go, we kind of open that door to that. How many kennel staff on any given day about for those 100 dog kennels, would you say?
We have 9 kennel staff total. So it rotates. Mondays and Tuesdays we're closed. So we have less kennel staff on during that time as we aren't under the gun to get everything done by 10 a.m. when we open. So they can take a little more time, do more deep cleaning, but we can have less staff. So maybe around 4 or so staff, and then we'll have 6 staff on open days. And they stagger. We have they come in as early as 9 a.m. and stay as late on open days till 6:30 or 7 p.m. To make sure that inventory is done and just kind of stagger those shifts so that when the morning person comes in at 6 a.m., they're not scrounging around looking for all of these different items and the inventory is done late at night. So that's kind of how we stagger.
I'm going off script again. I brought this up to both shelter systems that I volunteer at, and it's gone on deaf ears. Has Long Beach ever considered opening up to the public hours for the library? Different shelter systems are basically open from 8 to 5 weekdays and 11 to 5 on weekends or whatever it is. But do you have a night that you're open past 5, or have you considered that? Would you consider that? Is that now? What are your hours?
So that's a really great question. No, we do not. We are open till 5:30 Wednesday through Friday, and then 4:30. Am I getting that right? 4:30. I don't know. I can't remember right now on the weekends. But it's funny, we've been talking about doing that as well. Either having, evenings that are later, especially during summer hours. We are a little challenged because I don't have an inside well-lit space during winter to do adoptions. So we are, all of our adoptions happen outside and the meet and greets happen outside. So winter, we may have to close a little earlier just because it gets dark. But I am all for it. I am for trying anything that works. What our limitation is extending hours without extending staff. So if we were to be open later, our open time would have to be later, right? Instead of 8 to 5, it'd have to be 12 to 8, something like that. But I am not opposed to it at all. And actually, we've even hashed around the idea of doing every Friday evening, just being open late and having extended hours for adoptions. So that stuff the conversations are happening.
Okay. I mean, libraries do it. My point to everyone I've ever told is like, if a library can do it, then a dog shelter can do it, or an animal shelter can do it. I don't know why they can't. So as far as
we can do it. We just have to figure out how to staff it correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Animal Agenda on KPFK. I'm Tom Kiesche, and I'm speaking with Dr. Melanie Wagner, otherwise known as Dr. Wags. She's from LBACS, Long Beach Animal Care Services. Staff recruitment, staff retention, staff rewards, staff motivation, and where you find your staff.
Yeah, we are beholden to the city's hiring process. So our staff is found through a very standardized employee recruitment process that the city does. We're making a few changes though, which I'm really excited about. Currently, our animal care staff are actually maintenance assistants. That's the title under the city. And we are working towards changing that title to be animal care attendants, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really is, right? Because that recruitment process makes a lot more sense for everyone involved when you are recruiting for that specific job, instead of recruiting for maintenance assistant and then having to explain to people what it's going to look like. So we are making some of those changes to try to really recruit the right people and then retain the right people, and pay commensurate with that experience versus a entry-level maintenance assistant. But yeah, overall, we kind of are beholden to how the city recruits, which is usually through our website, and through a very standardized union process.
Because I see I've mentioned a few challenges, empathy being one, people giving up being another, but another challenge in some of the systems that I have volunteered at and visited is having people work there who are uncomfortable around animals, who have learned not to like animals, who don't like their job, who don't want to be there, who's just there for a pension. And I didn't know if you had the same challenges as that, or you have to suffer through bad apples as well.
I mean, I think every place suffers through the occasional bad apple. I mean, that's employment in general, right? But as a general rule here, I have found that this staff still have a love of animals. The majority of people who work here really, really do. You are correct, though, in your assumption that not everybody knows how to handle or work with them, right, or really understand behavior. We've recently brought in, again, external trainings for cat handling, for dog handling, just to try to get staff who we feel just need to understand things a little bit better. The proper training that they need, not just from us internally, but from external groups. And we are also requiring everyone, including volunteers, to do the fear-free sheltering. So I'm hoping that will ignite some passion and a little more understanding for our staff and volunteers as they interact with our animals.
Excellent. I'm going to do a speed round. Biggest challenges outside the shelter?
Oh, you mean like that are impacting us here?
100%.
The lack of spay and neuter. And strays. Just, I didn't know we had this many strays in our city, to be honest.
I don't think we do. I think people are just dumping animals because they don't want to.
I agree.
Yeah. Biggest challenge inside the shelter.
I know we talked about it. It's the staff to animal ratio right now. It just, we're having more coming in and being here longer, and I'm not sure that the amount of positions grows in correlation with the amount of animals coming in, because we are just beholden to certain rules here. So
biggest challenges for officers in the field.
That's a really great question. Again, I mean, I don't want to always just blame it on staffing, but I think their biggest challenges is that they focus on our priority 1 and 2, which is aggressive or sick or injured animals, but it leaves all these other things kind of like patrolling parks or just being as available to the community as they would like, because they are just dealing with so many emergencies. And I think it goes hand in hand with all of these animals being dumped at the parks, because we get a lot of dump dogs. They run, they get hit by a car, and our officers, obviously that's the priority. but they want to be out in the community. I recently had one of my officers ask if we could try to start like a task force for the unhoused. So before their areas get flipped and they get booted out, would we be able to go in and provide leashes and collars and food and try to get them to stay keep their pets instead of those animals coming here? And we just don't have the bandwidth to do that in the capacity that they want to. But I love that they want to. And we're going to figure out how.
That's the depth that we talked about earlier.
Right.
What do you wish the public would know before coming to the shelter or before calling LBACS?
That a lot of our questions can be answered online. Perfect. If they find they're going to wait a lot of time to talk to someone or wait in line, go online first. Check our website.
How can the public help officers in the field?
Another great question. Honestly, to give as much detail and information as possible. I think sometimes people are reluctant to share things. Our officers are not there for punitive reasons. Our officers want to go and help the community and not bring animals in, to be honest. So being as transparent, as honest, and trusting of them that they actually have the animal and community's best interest in heart. So to just tell them all the information they know, don't withhold, just human to human interaction.
Who's your boss?
My boss is Brent Dennis. He is the Director of Parks, Rec, Marine, and Animal Care Services.
How do you know if you're doing a good job?
I meet with him every week, and he does reviews, and we check in. We have a strategic plan, so we do quarterly strategic plan check-ins to make sure that we're on the right track.
Thank you so much. You've all been listening to The Animal Agenda. Our guest has been Dr. Melanie Wagner from Long Beach Animal Care Services. If you missed any part of this program or the previous program that she was on, you can visit kpfk.org/archives, stream, or download it. For more information on LBACS, go to their website, longbeach.gov/ACS, or their Instagram, @LBAnimalCare. Special thanks to Melody King and producer Marlena Bond, who is doing an excellent job, and I don't think she gets enough credit for it. Please support listener-sponsored KPFK by donating online at kpfk.org or by calling 818-985